The X-Zone radio and TV show is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone radio and TV show or in any manner endorsed by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, TalkStar Radio Network, its affiliated stations, or employees.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Two divided by love. Same kind of ride, and that just shouldn't be if you're still loving me. Come on, baby. Two divided by love can only be one, and one is a lonely number.
And welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Worldwide toll-free 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone at xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv at hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My guest this hour, Exonation, is Mac CHANEY, and he grew up in the poverty-stricken southeastern United States during the post-World War II days when cotton was king. He lived on a farm and graduated third in his class from Riverton High School in Madison County, Alabama, while working at a grocery store each evening for 5 hours and 10 hours on Saturday. Being full-time work in residential and commercial electrical work, within a week of graduation, he learned the electrical trade. However, the Selective Service had a draft quota to fill for opposing Castro's interests in the island to the south. Avoiding the draft, Mac volunteered for the U.S. Air Force, where he studied electronics along with radio and electronic telephones and telephone switching systems. Mac has done so much in the electronic, there's no word for you, the electronic and electrical industries. But I'll tell you this, anyone who has a CD player has this man to thank. He was the team leader of the group that invented the CD player. Wow. How many of you are now saying, you've got to be kidding? We're not kidding. Mac CHANEY is our special guest. Mac, welcome to the X Zone. And as I said before, thank you for your great work in developing the CD player.
Thank you, Rob.
Mac, where did your interest in electronics and electricity come from? Was this something that interested you as a child?
Not so much as a child. High school, I had a very good science, chemistry teacher. We had kind of a collection of everything under one basic teacher, small high school, and she was very instrumental in promoting kids to do what they enjoyed doing. And when I went in the Air Force in early 60s, that was one of my preferences. I told them that I would not join the Air Force unless I got what I wanted, and they worked that for me. We took the test, and I did very well on it, so they ushered me in and kind of opened the door. Of course, I'd had 2 years of electrical work, residential and commercial electricity installation primarily during that time, and that helped to further that, reinforce, I think, what I thought I would like to do.
Mac, during those days where you worked in the grocery store, did you ever, in your wildest dreams, dream where life would take you?
it's always difficult to see the future, and no, I didn't. I knew that I wasn't satisfied working at the grocery store, but it was convenient, and many times we take a turn of convenience when we should be focusing on what our dream really is, and I think I was a victim of that in a sense, but those were early days. I graduated from high school at 17, and in those days we didn't drive much because we didn't have vehicles to drive in more than other. But yeah, it was an experience. But I think I learned a lot of discipline and a few things that has helped me throughout industry.
All right, Mac, please stand by. You and I have to take our first break. Mac Chaney's our special guest, Exo Nation. www.adeptrep.com, adeptrep.com, and Mac and I will be back on the other side of this commercial break in 2 minutes as the X Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Exonation, Mac Chaney's our special guest. And Mac, how do you feel that the way that technology has changed over our lives and in the past few years?
It's made a tremendous impact on my life and certainly on my family's life, and I believe on the people that I interface with on a day-to-day basis. Technology is front and center. Mm-hmm. Even though we don't think about that, so we think about, the CD player just happened. But there are reasons for those things happening. Someone is driving technology, and many times that's capitalism, and someone has an idea, they have the money to put forth, or they can gather the money to put forth, and they go forward with the idea. And the people who are innovative in technology are always looking for opportunities to express themselves in some way. And it seems to me like that's a way of life. And I've been in technology now for many, many years, mm-hmm. and those things come and go. Things rise and then they lose their significance, and a new thing needs to replace that to gain better advantage. We look at things like the telephone systems and how much that's advanced over the ring out in the country where you had an 840 line and you had to share that line at the opportune times of the day. And many times, and we never had a telephone until I got out of high school, so I never had that problem. We had to run about 1.5 miles to get to the telephone when someone called. So, that innovation has drastically changed many of our ways of life in America. So that's just an example. The CD player, the telephone, the computers, I've grown up with computers pretty much in the last 20 years, 25 years. Worked for a company that was probably the number one producer of computers in the world for a number of years, and did a lot of work with them. IBM, Dell, all the name brand, HP, Xerox. We had them as clients that we actually produced products for. And I saw the computer grow up. We've been instrumental in a number of other industries other than communications and computers. We work in the appliance industry. We mm-hmm. work in the energy world of energy management, energy measuring, energy storing in the battery world, and so forth. We do quite a few things in things like the cattle industry. You wouldn't think that the cattle industry would have much electronics to do with our world, but to feed the mass population that we have in the world today, we have to become very efficient in that. And let me give you an example. We developed a little unit years ago that actually is like an anesthesia to a large animal. And the vet comes in and has to give several inoculations to the cattle and doctor for pink eye and various ailments that they might have. And they found that if they give them drugs, it takes several days for the animal to completely recover and start gaining weight or producing milk again under those conditions. So we helped the company develop a product that they can actually just plug it into the cow. It demobilizes the cow, and they go through and do whatever they have to do. Turn her loose, she goes back to grazing, no trauma. And other than a few minutes it takes to actually take her out of the system there, there's no repercussions or no impacts on the meat or the milk and so forth. So, that industry, I think is a very prime example of what we're doing. We do things in the hunting industry where we do game detection and tracking. After someone shoots an animal, they go lay down, they can't find them. We do some things like that. Golf and recreation, we feel like we have done our part, at least in the technology world, of taking one stroke off of a person's golf game. And we had a gentleman come to us. He was later in life and invested his life savings into a device that he had actually started the design on, and we picked it up and completed it and put them in his garage, and he's been selling those since then. So we feel like that's an improvement in the golfer's life. We do things for the travel industry, for the communications industry, for the entertainment. Of course, the CD player being the first in line with that, but we've done several things in the entertainment world. We do a lot of LED type, light emitting diode things for mood changing within a room. So we change the color, we move the light across the room so that people get the sense that they've lived through a normal day, maybe in 6 hours, but they're working the midnight shift, and they get off from work, and they feel like they're ready to go through their normal routine of going to sleep or taking some time before they go to sleep. It's so it changes the mood when you change the lighting like that. We do some things with chromotherapy, where they actually use the light emitting diodes and blink them at a certain rate, and then colors and durations and so forth that improve the skin texture, simulate light sun rather than direct sun, and the collagen in the skin begins to produce and rise to the surface so that people have a better look to their face, their hands, or arms, wherever they apply the therapy there. Do some things in the medical world, even though we're not actively engaged in the medical world now. We've done a number of things, and I won't go over those in particular there, but in the personal defense, we've done some things there where we've got a unit that we actually developed from scratch that has a regular LED flashlight on the end of it. English call it a torch, and to relate to your English audience there. And that also has an 80,000 volt stun gun on it.
80,000 volts?
80,000 volts. It's like sticking a spark plug wire in your mouth. And
holy cow!
So
talk about getting a buzz.
Yeah, and it's a handheld. It's like a 2 C-cell flashlight, and looks like a normal flashlight, except you got a little slide switch for safety, and then a button on the front of it that will actually demobilize a person very quickly with that. So we've developed that. We actually order those out of China, and my full-time agent for 14 years now in China is standing by for us to place another order on that one now. We've done some things in the space industry, touch panels and so forth, where they keep up with various things going on out in space. We do things with personal weapons systems for human interface technology. So there's a big gambit, and these are the ones that I can think of right off my head that we've been involved in. I didn't go back into my files here and see what all I've forgotten, but I'll give you an idea of what we have done in the world of technology in the last few years.
What do you say to people who think that all the technology that has developed over the past 20 years, you may laugh at this, but I hear this all the time, that it's come from crashed UFOs that have been reverse engineered?
You wouldn't be able to tell that to the space people here at the NASA Center. I work with those folks, and I'm in the town where Werner von Braun spent his later life after he came over from Germany, and many of my friends are German and have been German scientists. Most of them have retired now, but they don't advocate that, okay?
Neither do I. Every time I hear that, I say, my Lord, don't you think that the human race is capable of these great inventions?
Well, that's true. And when God created man, and I'm going to take it from that perspective, he created him to be like him in his image, and his image was not, brown hair with freckles. I don't see God as a human. I see God as a thinker.
Yeah.
And I think the perfection that man has come to is a duplication of what God expects of us.
Do you think that people really appreciate the great technology that we have available to us today, thanks to people like yourself?
I think many of us take things that we don't understand for granted, whether it be the food supply that we're able to supply to the world now and from America and from the Americas. We have a very good climate here, and we're blessed with things that we didn't have anything to do with creating, but it gives an environment where we are more free thinkers and can go out and explore opportunities that we can help people in some way by creating a gadget or whatever it be that might improve their life. The TV, look at the thin screen TVs. I was in Sam's a couple of weeks ago, and they've got TVs now to where they're like a quarter of an inch thick, that you can tape on the wall.
Basically, yeah.
And so it's a different world. I grew up in the days when TVs were huge, and the picture tube was small and round. Okay.
I remember those days myself.
Yeah, so we've come a long way, and I think we take a lot of those advances for granted that just someone came up with a better idea and did it, but it takes years sometimes of research to reach where we are. We've been working on LCD technology now for many years, and the color has only been in, for the last 10, 12 years. And those were in small modules. Now they're up to, room size, wall size, and we can display multiple screens on a wall so that it looks like one picture with a very thin line between the pictures. So that technology has advanced just tremendously with the thin film transistors coming in and plasma technology and several things. We've got 3 PhDs with a company that I represent actually working on the next generation of LCDs. So Access LCD is the company. They're up in Ohio, and they're very instrumental in developing new technology rather than just duplicating old technology.
Stand by, Mac. You and I have to take a commercial break. We'll be back after the news. Exo Nation, Mac Chaney's our very special guest. Here's a website, www.adeptrep.com. That's www.adeptrep.com. And Mac Chaney and I will be back on the other side. And we're going to be discussing the development of the CD player, because this gentleman was the team leader of the group of people who actually developed the CD player. 1-800-610-7035 is toll-free worldwide. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X Zone. Mac Chaney and I will be back after this news break. Whatever you do, don't go away.
Hi, this is Eric Rawls of Cosmoverse.com, and you're listening to Rob McConnell in the X Zone.
Hi, this is Blade Runner, and you are listening to Canada's #1 paranormal radio show, The X Zone, with Rob McConnell.
Hi, I'm Laura Sabrin of Feast to Fields Organic Vineyard in Jordan, and you're listening to Canada's #1 paranormal radio show, The X Zone, with Rob McConnell.
Hi, my name is Lady Ashley, the White Witch of Niagara-on-the-Lake, and you're listening to Canada's #1 paranormal talk radio show, The X Zone, with Rob McConnell.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Song of the South, sweet potato pie and I shut my mouth. Gone with the wind, there ain't nobody looking back again. Cotton on the roadside, cotton in the ditch. We all picked the cotton, but we never got rich. Daddy was a veteran, a Southern Democrat. They ought to get a rich man to vote like that. Sing it. Song of the South, sweet potato pie and I shut my mouth. Gone with the wind, there ain't nobody looking back again.
Exonation, Mac Chaney is my special guest. www.adeptrep.com is the website. And Mac, can you take us through the development of the CD player, since you were the guy that was in charge of the team that developed this great asset?
We started out by having to, we were back in the 8-track audio days, okay, and 12-inch vinyls. We advanced that far. We did have stereo, but we had the opportunity to take a look at some technology that was merging, and one of those was the integrated circuit that we're so familiar with today. Another one was the laser diode. We'd had a few lasers that we'd worked with in military applications and so forth. We had an opportunity to take the laser diode to a commercial application, and we had to actually experiment with that laser to see if we could burn a hole in a disc, turning disc, and we took an 1/8-inch piece of flat glass and made it into a vinyl-sized record with a hole in the middle, and we started spinning that record and shooting to see if we could find the hole. Well, the technology exceeded our wildest dreams. They calculated that by the time we finished that they could store every credit card transaction in the United States for an entire week on that 12-inch platter.
Wow.
So to give you some idea of the technology that we were able to develop, the holes were so small that we shot a series of holes in this spinning disc. And let me back up a second. We actually experimented with over 500 plating processes to go onto that disc so that we could actually punch a hole, not in the glass, but in the plating on that glass. And we wound up with a bismuth coating that worked and punched a hole and yet didn't fry and sizzle and cause splatter all over the board and so forth. It wasn't as conductive as copper, and we actually tried copper. Copper is so conductive that it dissipated too much heat and wouldn't burn a hole. So we had a lot of headaches and did a lot of work to try to find a substrate that we could actually use on that glass surface. But we got it up and started rumbling the thing over and found out that, lo and behold, the laser would actually punch a hole up close to the hub there where the stem is in the middle of the record, but it wouldn't punch a hole in the outside. Well, we found the glass on the outside drooped down too much to be in focus. And we didn't have automatic focusing devices in those days, so we had to put an air bearing underneath the outside of the rim of that piece of glass to lift it up and keep it flat. So we actually blew a compressor in there to hold it up. So give you some of the trial and error type things that we've done there. From there, we punched some holes in the piece of glass, or in the substrate on the piece of glass. It took us 2 weeks to find 2 holes in a row. That's how slow our electronic mechanism was and how fast the diode was. The diode could punch the hole, but it was so slow getting it loaded to punch. We had to go back and reinvent capacitors. We had to go back and reinvent new ways of doing technology to speed the logic up so we could actually get the data out there to make a continuous hole pattern. So it was a day of rejoicing when we found 2 holes under an 80-powered microscope at the same time. That's how far apart we were. And every dust particle, and we're in a fairly clean lab, but we had dust particles that would settle, and we'd blow them, brush them away or whatever, and look for another one. We finally found 2, and one of the engineers working with me there, he came unglued. This was in the days of Simon and Garfunkel's Out on the Desert, on a horse with no name. And that was blaring on the radio, and he outshouted the Simon and Garfunkel there, okay, when he found those holes in there. So from there, we finished up that project, I don't know, in several months. It probably took us 4 or 5 months, actually, to complete that project. By the time we got it finished, the insurance company had gone out and talked to the world about some new technology, and the Japanese were very high in technology at the time, before China and Taiwan and so forth built up. So they came in to look at it and instantly realized, and you could see the wheels spinning, and they said, we got application. We got cassette tape first, then we got audio on disc. So we could see things happening there with their thinking that we didn't think about audio at the time. We thought about data, storing credit card transactions. That was our mission. But think of the improvements that have come from the CD, basically, and the DVD. The DVD is an offshoot of the same technology. They just use it multi-layer and so forth to get the DVD and the Blu-ray and so forth. So a lot of the things that we developed are still in use out there and still being enjoyed by every discipline in education, in technology, and entertainment. There's so many fields that span.
What industries do you see leading us in the next decade?
Certainly energy is going to be one of the big challenges. They forbid us from drilling. They forbid us from building dams. They forbid us from building nuclear plants. We're to the area that we have to invent or perish, or at least our way of life as we think of it today. So we've got to come up with ways of producing energy and conserving energy. There's no way we can conserve our way to success. We can conserve our way to give us some time until we find a way of success. But we're working very diligently on a compressor right now, for instance, for refrigeration to a heat pump and so forth. It's about 75% less expensive to produce that coolness or that heat from the compressor that we've been used to. The weight of it is tremendously reduced. There are so many things that have changed in the way we do things. The magnet is 10 times stronger today than it was 20, 30 years ago. The neodymium magnets have given us a lot of opportunities to do some things in motor technology and in many different disciplines out in the technology world. Of course, the integrated circuit is continuing to improve. We work with an ASIC company that actually puts a multiple set of different functions on a single chip. And we've been instrumental in getting those into technology so that we could put an entire radio, for instance, on a chip instead of a big boom box or whatever that has all the other things. All we do is put the power to it and put the speakers on, basically. Some technology to change the station and change the volume and so forth, like the TV wand. They're using basically a laser diode or a type of diode there that is infrared. It's not, you don't see the flash when you change your TV, but it actually notifies the chip to do something different than it was doing before. So, yeah, I see those types of things continuing to improve. I see we're going to have to innovate. The population in the world today, I just heard a statistic the other day that I haven't found a way to challenge. They say there's more people living today than have ever lived in the history of the world, all combined. We've got a lot of mouths to feed. We've got a lot of recreation to take advantage of, ways to entertain people. We've got transportation issues. How do we move those people to work? How do we move those people to where they need to go on vacations and so forth? So air technology, the we've got a Boeing plant here close, and I watch the planes land and do touch and goes and some experimental stuff every now and then. It's amazing how we've come a long way in just transportation, and yet we're still using up the fuel at a very rapid rate. And somehow we've got to find a way that we can reduce the use of fuel on a per trip basis, but we've also got to find better ways of producing fuel. We can't grow enough corn to produce enough ethanol to do all the vehicles in the United States or the world. So as we run out of oil in the world, we've got to innovate. We've got to find ways of doing that. So energy definitely is one of the leading areas that we've got to work on to see what we can do with that. Without that, there are so many other technologies that are almost useless. Almost everything we have today runs on some kind of power mechanism.
What about the magnetic propulsion? You know, the use of repulsion caused by magnets to actually, get vehicles on the road to work. Don't we have the ability to make it happen, or is it the government that is suppressing and telling the transportation industries not to go into the alternative energies because they're making too much money on the fossil fuels?
Well, that's a good point. I see the levitation. Russia's been pretty successful in that. Several other countries have come out with trains that actually run on air.
Yep.
It's two magnets opposing each other. The track and the wheel oppose each other as they go by, and as a result, the train actually runs without friction, basically, as you go down the track. So, yeah, that's a very good innovation. The magnet to propel that forward, is another issue. Almost all of our trains today in the United States, I've heard recently, actually run on electric power. That was a surprise to me. I'd never thought about it. I thought they were still running the diesel engine out there. They run the diesel engine to charge the battery to run the train. So they can get the diesel engine to run at a very efficient rate by running it at a constant speed to charge the battery, and then they can do the stop and go and so forth with the battery in that locomotive. So, that is an innovation, but we're still using up fossil fuel. So the question is there technology, or can we develop technology that can do a solar or some other medium that we can convert, that we can actually produce hydrogen propulsion or something like that by breaking down the water into oxygen, the water to oxygen and hydrogen, and then recombining it under certain conditions to give us the propulsion. It's all an interesting area. Many people are working on that. Many are thinking on that. Our scientists they're perplexed that we can't break through that barrier. And certainly government is more of a detriment than anything. Anytime you tax something, you'll get less of it.
Yeah.
Anytime you regulate something, you will get less of it. So when we look at the price at the pump, much of that is taxes comes out to taxes already.
Sure, because you're taxed on top of tax, on top of tax, on top of tax. And then, here in Ontario, we pay the HST, which is the harmonized sales tax, which includes your provincial tax, your federal tax, and then there's a highway tax on top of that. And I'm sure, I know for a fact that each and every step of the way from the time it's, gets to the refinery to the time it gets to your gas tank, it's being taxed on top of tax, on top of tax. So, is it in the government's best interest to find an alternative fuel source unless they can tax it again?
You're right. They will find a way to tax it. There's no doubt about that. But it's exorbitant taxing. I think that I see that's bad. I'm not against taxes.
Nor am I.
The benefit. We need roads, to drive a vehicle on. So I think we have to say that that's a community project rather than an individual product to pave the road in the front of his house or the road that he's driving, interstate traffic and so forth. So definitely, we need government involved in things like that, at least to manage that system and somewhat regulate the system too. But I think when government steps in, they're normally not the technical people who understand how something is done. And when they say, okay, you're going to do it this way, that's detrimental to industry coming up with a more efficient way of doing things. So, yeah, I can see, I don't want to sound negative toward government, but I'm just saying that they have their place and technology has its place, and when they collide, neither function well.
Well, I figure if NASA can put men on the moon back and forth several times, if we can put robots on Mars, why in the name of heaven can't we develop an alternative fuel supply? That makes no sense to me.
Well, I'm not in the fuel supply development, and I'd like to defer that to some brighter person than I am in that technology, but I can see that there are some hopes in some technology and some resources that are out there. There's tons of methane on the bottom of the sea.
Yeah.
The Japanese have been exploring that for years to try to find ways of lifting that to the surface and utilizing that solid methane and releasing it as a gas that they could turn into technology. That is something that we need to be exploring.
All right, please stand by, Mac. You and I have to take our final break. X-Zone Nation, Mac Chaney's our special guest, www.adeptrep.com. And we'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue here in the X-Zone from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.
There ain't nobody looking back again. Big white bird, gonna fly right out of here without a single word. But you'll break my heart when I watch you close that door, 'cause I know I won't see you anymore. Don't pour your love out on me, baby.
X-Zone Nation, our special guest this hour is Mac Chaney. And Mac, what do you see as the biggest challenge that technology has to face in the very near future?
Well, definitely the rising population, the government controls, the international friction that seems to be building constantly. All of those things are detrimental to building for the future. And as a result, I see technology as standing by waiting. You ask about, innovating to energy issues. Those definitely, in a war situation, if things get escalated, that is going to be detrimental to technology, and moving energy across oceans is going to be detrimental to having energy to do what we need to do in technology. So I can see a lot of tension in the world now that is restricting, what we need to be doing to meet the world's demand for products and services. It's even hard to say where NASA will go. NASA has been instrumental in basically developing the requirement for small electronic systems. And with that, many other propulsion and those type things have been developed. They're not necessarily adaptable to interplanetary travel, but at least the technology and the thinking and the engineers that we've developed, and they say now that there are more engineers today than in the history of the world combined. So it's like the population. We've got the engineers to do what we need to do. If we can find ways of keeping the peace and keeping government off of our back, keeping the taxes down, and having people focused on the future. When we get focused on sitting on the porch or watching TV all day, innovation doesn't come from that. Innovation comes from that group that's willing to say, "Hey, throw that sandwich aside. I don't eat lunch. I don't eat dinner." And Thomas Edison was a good example. They said he never slept in a bed. He would work until he was exhausted. He would get in a chair, take a 20-minute nap, and go back to work. That's technology. Those are people who live to work. And how long can a person work that way? Indefinitely. I've seen men throughout my life that thrived on work instead of thriving on the niceties of life, and yet they felt like that they had accomplished something at the end of life that they were proud of and that the world would be proud of. So I can see that we've got challenges, we've got resistance to change that we have to always look for. We've got ways of working through our education systems to adapt, and many of the fast adapters jump in and buy gadgets, and they promote it. My grandkids are texting at 10 times faster than I can write now. So where's the world taking us? I write a lot of books.
Yeah. Mac, I want to thank you so much for joining us. We've just run out of time, but please don't be a stranger here to the X Zone, and thanks very much for all the wonderful things that you've done, especially the CD player.
Well, thank you very much, Rob. I appreciate the time.
Take care, Mac. Mac CHANEY has been our guest. www.adeptrep.com. We'll be back after the news as the X Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada.